In this video, I'm going to review this £35,000 true 4K laser projector from JVC. Is it worth taking out a second mortgage for this machine? Let's find out. Hey everyone, this is Vincent from HDTV Test here. In this channel, we do technical reviews of televisions and projectors like this, video interviews, settings tips and tricks, and also the occasional unboxing video. So if you are not a subscriber yet, please consider subscribing by clicking this button right here. For the past few years, projector enthusiasts have been begging JVC to release a native 4K projector to compete with Sony, and the company finally launched one in the shape of this JVC Z1, also marketed as the RS4500 in the USA, I have beside me here today. This projector also uses a laser light engine which is far more stable than conventional light-based projectors, so you won't need to replace any bulb or pay for repeat calibrations because of dimming over time. Another feature which bumps up the price of the JVC Z1 or RS4500 is an all-glass lens system. If you're into photography, you'll know that when you invest in expensive lenses, you're basically paying for the glass, which has tremendous impact on the final image quality of your photos. The same applies to projectors, and the lens quality on the Z1 is optically stunning. With these elements in place, the JVC Z1 is certainly not for the faint-hearted. It costs £35,000, is larger in size than most home cinema projectors because of the internal fan system to cool down the laser engine, and it weighs a ton. I mean, I'm no shrinking violet. From time to time I even assemble 65-inch televisions all by myself, but there's no way I could have lifted this JVC Z1 alone. It's a two-man job for most people. The projector is THX certified and supports both HDR10 and HLG HDR formats. At the back of the projector, there are two HDMI 2.0B inputs with full 18 gigabits per second bandwidth. There's also a USB port, but it's only for firmware update and cannot be used to play video files. Surprisingly, for a projector costing £35,000, there's no motorized lens cover. You'll have to do it manually. Like all JVC projectors, Hdmi handshaking when you are changing resolution or frame rates of video sources can take infuriatingly long. We clocked it at around 20 seconds or even longer most of the time, never less than 10 seconds. First world problems though. After running in our review sample and calibrating for both SDR and HDR, we sat down and watched our reference movies on this projector. Let's just get something out of the way. If you're expecting the legendary black level and contrast of JVC's previous lamp-based D-ILA projectors, you'll probably be disappointed with the Z1 or RS4500. The combination of new native 4K panels, laser light source, not to mention the push for more HDR brightness, have unfortunately elevated the black floor. Don't get me wrong now, the blacks on the Z1 are not that bad. Probably around the level of a first or second generation Sony 4K projector, but they are nowhere close to JVC's own X5000 or X7000 E-Shift projectors. Luckily, the JVC Z1 offers a laser dimming system similar to local dimming on LED LCD TVs, which can be activated through the dynamic control setting. There are two modes besides off, Mode 1 and Mode 2, with the latter being more aggressive. Generally, we found Mode 2 to work quite well to darken low-light scenes. It exhibits less obvious brightness jumps than Mode 1, but depending on how sensitive you are, you'll still see some luminance fluctuations and strange flickering in dark scenes occasionally. Another thing that we should probably mention is the laser diode power mode, which dictates the projector's lumens output. The higher the mode, the brighter the picture, but also the noisier the fan. In the low mode, the background noise is probably slightly louder than most consumer projectors these days, but in the high mode, which is essential for HDR really, it can sound like loud air conditioning. If you or your custom installer can place the projector far away in an enclosure, then all the better. JVC also sells an optional exhaust cover accessory which diverts hot air coming out from the vents, changing the pitch of the background noise to a less noticeable level. Okay. Let's comment on the picture quality, starting with 1080p Blu-rays. According to our test patterns, the JVC Z1 provides some truly outstanding upscaling to its native 4K resolution, and together with the pin-sharp lens optics accurate calibrated colors, and also a very clean image courtesy of the laser light engine. It really breathes a new lease of life into regular Blu-rays, with well-mastered titles like Skyfall looking fantastic. We also checked out the projector's video and film deinterlacing capabilities from HD sources, but it didn't do very well. If possible, send a progressive rather than interlaced video signal to the Z1. Next, we tested the projector's motion clarity. It's a sample and hold display, so baseline motion resolution came in at 300 lines according to this test pattern I've demonstrated in previous videos. JVC offers a motion compensated frame interpolation system called Clear Motion Drive, or CMD. CMD low increased motion resolution to 450 lines, while CMD high boosted it all the way to 1080 lines or even higher, but both introduced unmistakable soap opera effect to 24 frames per second movies. What impressed us with the clear motion drive on the JVC Z1 was that the interpolation artifacts were very well controlled, compared with other motion interpolation implementation from other brands. For watching sports, we'd happily use Clear Motion Drive High, which improved motion clarity significantly. We watched Formula 1 racing and lots of football with CMD High, and only saw very rare frame skipping, which were really quite random. We think most people would accept this over a much blurrier moving picture in fast action sports with CMD off. Of course, being purist, we would always keep CMD off for watching films. While on the topic of Clear Motion Drive, previous JVC projectors can suffer from posterization with CMD engaged. We checked out various scenes such as the sky in The Revenant on the Z1 and didn't see this issue at all. Moving on to HDR, there's one very important choice that owners have to make. You see, the JVC Z1 can hit 99% of DCI-P3 or 79% of Rec 2020 color gamut according to our measurements. But to do so, a filter has to be placed along the optical pathway, resulting in a light output drop of nearly 40%. On our screen setup with LD power set to high, Color Profile Hdr, which is the projector's native gamut without the filter, delivered 218 nits calibrated, but only 65% of Rec 2020. If we switch color profile to BT 2020, you can actually hear a motorized shift inside the projector taking place, presumably to move the color filter in place, which expands Rec 2020 coverage to 79%, but peak luminance has decreased to only 132 nits. So higher peak brightness or more saturated colors, which should you choose? Well, we think most users would be better off with Color Profile HDR that gives greater lumens output. After all, the Imaging Science Foundation, or ISF, lists the top 4 elements of picture quality to be contrast performance, color saturation, color accuracy, and resolution, in that particular order. If you look at this scene from the 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray of Pan, Color Profile High just have more dynamism, more range for the subtleties in the sun and the clouds to be expressed. Similarly, in this scene from Kingsman, with Color Profile HDR, the skin tones are better, the reflections of his glasses just look more realistic, even though we've calibrated both Color Profile HDR and BT 2020 correctly. And the brightness benefits of Color Profile HDR are not limited to bright scenes. If we look at this dark sequence from The Revenant, I'm not sure you can see it from the camera because of how dark it is, but when we watched it, Color Profile HDR just gives that bit more breathing room for the shadow detail to be expressed, compared with Color Profile BT 2020, where low light detail look less distinct. So is there any advantage in using Color Profile BT 2020? We found this footage in Planet Earth 2 with this amazingly colorful bird of paradise where Color Profile BT 2020 looked more saturated. But these instances were not frequent, and overall we think most viewers will prefer the higher peak luminance of Color Profile HDR. Okay, with Color Profile set to HDR and the machine calibrated to ST2084 standard with an appropriate multiplier factor, the JVC Z1 delivered the most impressive 4K HDR Ultra HD Blu-ray presentation we've seen from a projector so far, thanks to increased luminance, razor-sharp optics, and improved tracking of PQ-EOTF, that stands for Perceptual Quantization Electro-Optical Transfer Function, which is the video signaling standard used in HDR10. One caveat we'll mention though is that we haven't tested the Sony VW5000ES, a £60,000 projector the JVC Z1 is designed to undercut. It's very unlikely we'll ever review the VW5000ES, given that Sony UK decided against putting one in their review circulation. Last but not least, let's talk about using the JVC Z1 or RS4500 for playing games. Previous JVC projectors have always suffered from very high input lag, around 125 milliseconds, with no way of lowering it. But after prolonged lobbying from owners and technical reviewers like ourselves, the company finally introduced a low latency mode last year, and we are seeing it for the first time on the Z1. Interestingly, based on our test, what the low latency mode is doing, if you enable it, is to simply disable the motion processing. We put a Leo Bodnar device to measure, and as long as you don't engage clear motion drive, the input lag remained the same at 47 milliseconds, regardless of whether low latency mode was on or off, whether the source signal was 1080p SDR or 4K HDR. 47 milliseconds is still slightly sluggish for playing Twitch games like first-person shooters, but it's a whole lot better than 125 milliseconds. If you enable clear motion drive, input lag would jump to around 188 to 200 milliseconds. So, how do we pass verdict on a £35,000 projector that does most things better, but one key area, namely black level, worse than JVC's own eShift D-ILA projectors, which are much more affordable? For us, the answer is simple. Why do some wankers like myself buy a Rolex watch when a cheap Timex will do? With Rolexes, you have to wear them every day or risk losing power and have to wind them up to keep it ticking nicely. It's an absolute chore. And they don't even keep time as accurately as a Timex, let's say over a few weeks. But it's in the appreciation of the internal movement, the finer point of the art. And the same applies to the JVC Z1. It's a first-generation 4K laser product from a company for the consumer space, so some teething problems cannot be avoided. But if you want the best looking, the sharpest, the brightest 4K HDR performance from a non-commercial projector today, the JVC Z1 will provide it. If you have enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe to the HDTV Test YouTube channel for more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next time.